I declare this meeting open at 7 p.m. and welcome everyone to this evening's meeting of Ku-ring-gai Council. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here this evening. As councillors, we are entrusted with the responsibility of representing the diverse interests of our residents. Let us work together in a collaborative spirit, respect diverse opinions and seek common ground for the good of Ku-ring-gai. Before we begin, I'd like to outline a few procedures in relation to this evening's meeting of Council. This meeting is being recorded and webcast live on Council's website. Only councillors and council staff will be shown on camera. Attendees must not make a recording or photograph of the meeting without prior approval. Council meetings are open to the public as observers only. In line with the Code of Meeting Practice, members of the public can address Council via the monthly public forum. Council may close part of the meeting to deal with certain confidential matters in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act. These discussions will not be open to the public and will not be webcast. All attendees must comply with the Code of Meeting Practice and other relevant council codes, policies and procedures. Attendees must refrain from engaging in disorderly conduct, publicly alleging breaches of the council's code of conduct or making other potentially defamatory statements. Councillors, council staff and members of the public must ensure that mobile phones are turned to silent during the meeting. Councillors and council staff must declare and manage any conflicts of interest that they may have about any item of business that is on the agenda this evening. Apologies. Are there any apologies for councillors? I have... General Manager. Oh, sorry, you had your light on. I have two apologies that have come to me via the General Manager. So the first one is Councillor Spencer, and I will note the apology and the reason. As a courtesy, I'm writing to inform you that I have declared a conflict of interest in the matter of Norman Griffiths Oval, synthetic and natural turf. Due to this declaration, I will not be attending the extraordinary meeting of Council scheduled for tonight. Thank you for your understanding. The second apology I have is from Councillor Jeff Pettit. As I previously declared a conflict of interest in regards to Norman Griffiths Oval, synthetic turf, that conflict still remains, and as such, I will not be attending tonight's meeting. Can I have a motion to accept apologies and grant a leave of absence? Councillor Sam Nye, if you can be the mover. The seconder, Councillor Barbara Ward. All those in favour? That is Councillor Barbara Ward, Councillor Sam Nye, Councillor Christine Kay, and against Councillor Indu Balachandran, Councillor Matt Devlin, Councillor Kim Wheatley, Councillor Martin Smith. That being 4 votes to 1. Sorry, 4 votes to 3. Did I get that right? I think I've missed. Oh, sorry, I've forgotten about Alec. That is my apologies, Alec. I wasn't looking in your direction, so please shout out if I forget you. Okay, we might just go back and do that again. So all those in favour of accepting the apologies, we've got Councillor Barbara Ward, Councillor Sam Nye, Councillor Indu Balachandran, Councillor Alec Taylor, Councillor Christine Kay. Those against? Councillor Matt Devlin, Councillor Kim Wheatley, Councillor Martin Smith. The vote being 5-3, that is carried. Are there any apologies from staff, General Manager?
Madam Mayor, there is one apology from the Director Community who is unwell, and the Manager Community Development is acting in that role.
Thank you. Are there any other conflict of interest declarations for councillors? There is none. Are there any conflict of interest declarations for staff, General Manager?
No, Madam Mayor.
Are there any documents circulating the councillors' papers to be dealt with at an appropriate time during this meeting, General Manager?
Madam Mayor, there is one document, a some confidential legal advice from the corporate lawyer issued today.
Are there any reports to be considered in a closed meeting and not released to the press and public?
Yes, Madam Mayor, there are some attachments to GB1. There's attachment 3, which is confidential legal advice, and attachment 4, which is detailed financial estimates.
Thank you. Now, in relation to the minutes of our last meeting will go to our ordinary meeting of council for September. Petitions. Have any petitions been received by councillors or staff? That looks like no petitions. Okay, we only have one general business item, which is GB1, Norman Griffiths Oval Upgrade. Do I have a mover of a motion, which is GB1? Councillor Devlin, would you like to move an alternative or move what
I'd like
the
to move the
recommendation?
motion as printed.
Okay. A seconder for that motion? Councillor Martin Smith? Okay. Councillor Matt Devlin, would you like to speak to the motion?
No, I'll reserve my right.
Okay. Councillor Martin Smith, the seconder, would you like to speak to the motion? Okay. Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Indu Balachandran. Oh, sorry. Councillor Sam Nye.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to speak in favour of the motion, qualifying my support with the historical and future context of the sports field. We see a great divide. Soccer wants sports field availability to boost physical and mental health, especially during winter. Environmentalists view synthetic surfaces as detrimental to environment and people. Both views have merit, however, they overlook the wider context and role that this project plays in Ku-ring-gai's future. As a councillor, I must provide recreation space for our future population's health. In 2021, the Northern Sydney Councils projected a massive shortfall of 40% by 2026 and 49% by 2036. These projections were set before the state changed its policy last year, doubling Ku-ring-gai's population within 3 decades. Providing open space for twice the population is challenging, made worse by other constraints. The state's approach denies council the ability to properly plan and fund traffic and recreation infrastructure. New residents provide hundreds of millions in housing contributions, which are pork-barreled to the west. In real terms, rates are unrealistically pegged at 20% less per ratepayer than 10 years ago. With greater environmental consciousness, clearing critically endangered bush for new ovals is not an option. We need to recognise that any council decision will have negative impacts, and the challenge is minimising these while seeking optimal outcomes. In this context, a synthetic surface at Bicentennial Park makes sense. Unlike Mimosa, Norman Griffiths has excellent traffic connections, parking and proximity to rugby, netball, cricket, aquatics, bowls, dog walking and unstructured open spaces. This well-connected 16-hectare site offers plenty for everyone, and a synthetic surface opens more options for diverse recreational needs without clearing more trees and establishing new roads elsewhere. Though well-meaning, I find the opposition to synthetic to be emotive and disconnected from reality, akin to climate deniers' opposition to decarbonisation. Climate deniers highlight the lack of solar panel end-of-life options, wind turbine bird strikes, and the environmental impacts of lithium mining and disposal. While scientifically factual in isolation, the bigger picture shows renewables have far less lifetime impact than fossil fuels. Climate deniers ignore the bigger picture for ideological reasons and overlook more recent advances like improved solar panel and lithium recycling and sodium battery trials. Similarly, enviro activists attack synthetic options using outdated comparisons. They quote rubber crumb studies while council considers cooler alternatives like natural cork and olive. They ignore the emerging industry for turf recycling. They misquote other jurisdictions' laws, use generic assumptions that do not align with local experience, and ignore the pesticides and fertilizers that wash downstream from natural turf. Like climate deniers, enviro activists at the other extreme employ the same tactics and find the bigger picture ideologically inconvenient. I welcome the state government's new guidelines on Division 5.1 assessments, encouraging risk assessment after factoring in mitigations. Council will need to mitigate flood risk, install 200-micron filtration systems, and consider climate trends, end-of-life management, and material data sheets. Much of this is already being done, and I encourage our staff to continue. While critiquing one group, I need to be clear that I'm not mindlessly supporting the other. With our growing population, limited funding, and space shortages, soccer's access to entire fields may end in the 2040s. Population pressures may force council to allocate fields like Norman Griffiths to other codes like futsal, so more people benefit from limited space. To support the even greater intensity, synthetic is currently our best option. In closing, councils need to see the bigger picture. Our council has limited open spaces and resourcing. Both synthetic and natural cost similar in this specific situation, and we must consider the future needs of Ku-ring-gai residents over the full life of a diverse asset portfolio. And if we always flee from risk without considering appropriate mitigations, then we will never achieve anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nye. Councillor Indu Chandran, are you speaking on this motion?
I have some questions.
Okay,
Thank you.
go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have some questions relating to this issue, partly because I was not here when the original decision was made, but partly because I have some information and questions and matters that have arisen since, I beg your pardon. The first question I have relates to our community research in 2024. So I'm trying to understand where our broader community stands on this matter. I understand we had a question on synthetic turf that was specifically added to our 2024 Micromex community research. Can someone from staff confirm this and read out what the question was? And I'm really interested in why this specific question was added to our community research in 2024, 3 years after we made the decision on this matter.
General Manager, would you like to take that question?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll answer the second part of it, and the Director Corporate will answer the first part. So we added the question. There was obviously it's a hotly contested issue, natural turf versus synthetic, and when we were preparing the survey last year, we had some discussions with councillors, and that as an issue rose as one that we should ask the community about. And I'll now refer to the Director Corporate for the first part.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So the residents were asked whether they agreed that the benefits of all-weather synthetic playing surfaces outweigh the environmental concerns. 29% of respondents agreed with the statement, which means that they believe that the benefits of synthetic playing surfaces are more important than the environmental concerns. And 40% of residents disagreed, which suggests that they prioritize environmental concerns over the benefits of synthetic playing fields. Now, males and middle-aged individuals aged 35 to 64 are slightly more inclined to agree with the statement from our data, and individuals aged 55 plus are significantly less likely to agree, which indicates that a stronger concern for the environmental impacts. Now, some of the top reasons for agreement include all-weather usage, less maintenance, it's cheaper, it's good for fitness and mental health, and important for everyone, and it's safer. And some of the main reasons for disagreement include preference for natural grass, retaining greenery, health concerns, heat exposure and injury, environmental concerns, and do not like the use of artificial or plastic.
And so, just to confirm, 40% thought the environmental concerns outweighed the benefits of synthetic turf, 29% thought synthetic turf was worthwhile, and 30%, I understand, were unsure.
Unsure, correct.
Okay. Couple more questions, a few more questions actually. The use of 1,200 hours of hire in the financial model was based on Council's own experience of the best natural turf we currently have. Can I just check did Ag Enviro provide any hours for use in the model at all?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. No, in the report they didn't.
Did it? Okay.
They-
And
they
have,
the only figure, the related figure, was that it would provide for 550 plus players
okay.
to train there, but not the number of hours a
Okay.
week.
I thought so. I just want to check. And we have no prior experience of this type of turf in Ku-ring-gai and the hours. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
What proportion of our natural turf fields would you consider having best in practice drainage?
Madam Mayor, I refer that to the Director of Operations.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just about 10% of our natural turf fields.
Okay. I have a few questions on finance, if my fellow councillors will indulge me. A significant proportion of the design required for synthetic turf or the current design, has already been expended. Can you confirm, can someone from staff confirm that the present value calculation deals strictly with natural turf as a late comparative option rather than an original option? So we kind of discounted the $6 million we've already spent. That's not included in the NPV.
That's correct, yeah.
That's correct. Would it be reasonable to also state that a significant proportion of the cost expended to date of $6 million is related to design specifically to the current synthetic turf design, i.e. may not have been needed for natural turf?
Madam Mayor, a lot of the costs expended to date should not have been needed for either option, because it's been spent on legal fees, dewatering, etc.
What proportion of the costs expended to date relate to the design, and what proportion relate to ancillary costs that are about difficult process? Are you able to provide that, or is that in confidence?
The Director of Operations may be able to.
Through you, Madam Mayor, approximately 50% of what's been spent to date has been spent on design and construction of what's actually there. The other, about approximately 50%, is as the General Manager described.
Okay. Now, I just want to turn our minds to the valuation and how we assess value to the community. I note that the Chief Scientist in 2021 recommended that given longer-term climate and heat projections, attention should be given to mitigating environmental risk, also in materials research, etc., etc. I'm just interested, and I know the new guidelines require heat and climate projections to be addressed in any kind of synthetic turf proposal. I'm wondering if and how long-term heat and climate projections and environmental risks have been addressed in the financial analysis of this project.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, Councillor, if you're referring to the documents in front of you, that specifically addressed the Council resolution from April, which asked for a high-level assessment of the design cost and time. It didn't ask for an environmental assessment. In fact, that was discussed at the time but not proceeded with.
And would it be reasonable to say that this full analysis of health and environmental risk and cost was not able to be completed or thought about because of the time it would take and the already significant delays of the project, and the councillors who were asked were advised that doing this would need an additional kind of notice of motion and would take time?
Oh, thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that was, I think what you're referring to was at a briefing recently. Yes, that's correct. However, back in April it was considered and decided not to proceed down that path.
Okay, thank you. It was implied, well, I won't talk about the public forum, but can I just check if the turf we are proposing to lay, the synthetic turf, is 100% recyclable?
I'll refer that to the Director of Operations.
Through you, Madam Mayor, should the project proceed to natural turf, synthetic turf. We'll look at the latest technology that's available and obviously choose one that is recyclable or mostly recyclable.
Okay, so the decision hasn't been made as yet on which one?
Not the type of, not the brand of turf, no.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have for now, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers on the motion?
I'd like to.
Councillor Indu
let me just check.
Balachandran?
Are there
Yep.
other speakers?
No, there are no other speakers on the
I'd
motion.
like to propose an amendment, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Balachandran.
Thank you. Shall I read it out?
Yes, please.
The motion proposes that Council adopt an additional budget of $5.4 million and proceed to complete the Norman Griffiths Oval project with the natural turf option. And secondly, that the Council conduct a review of natural turf quality and drainage systems on existing natural turf fields and provide a report and recommendations on a systematic upgrade schedule over the next 10 years to uplift a selection of fields to best in practice natural turf materials and drainage to accommodate the growth in community sporting use and the report will be provided to Council in February 2026 in time for budget preparations for FY 26-27.
Thank you, Councillor Balachandran. A seconder for the amendment? I will second the amendment. So, Councillor Kane, go ahead.
Thank
Councillor.
you. I sat at Norman Griffiths last week to talk to whoever went by, and a few people did. Person one said it was taking much too much time, understood that synthetic turf was helpful for soccer, but natural is most beautiful. The second person said they understood, they played soccer, and preferred natural turf because of the injuries they sustained on synthetic turf. The third person said they missed seeing kids running around on the field, but wanted to check the science with a local STEM group. And she got back to me and she said there was general unhappiness with synthetic turf while people acknowledged the benefit to soccer. The middle ground, I think, is where a shared solution lies. I do not want to throw any allegations at the sporting community or environmental interests today. I'm trying to find a middle ground. Let me start with the dollars. We need to make a financially prudent decision. I really think natural turf limits our cost and liability because it is known. Our analysis is silent on health and environmental impacts. We have not adhered to processes for economic analysis and decision-making recommended by both the Treasury and Chief Scientist. The value analysis relies on synthetic turf being replaced every 10 years. To be honest, this is not a given in the increasingly climate-sensitive world we are living in. The new turf guidelines require this specific assessment to be made. I'm worried that we are trying to slip something in before the rules tighten around us. The NPV analysis is incomplete and should not be relied on as the sole criteria for decision-making. It is a useful but limited reference. Natural turf also draws a line in the sand in terms of risk, which has a definite future cost. Our community has no appetite for financial risk at the moment. We have a 400% cost increase and we are in the middle of a rate variation. I don't think we can insist on progressing the original option from over 4 years ago when material new information is at hand. Our community sentiment, our climate science and economic analysis, which now requires a holistic approach. We are expected as councillors to be adaptable. Lastly, let's look at value to residents and the arguments residents have been making to us. The original budget was $3.3 million with $1 million in grants for a facility that primarily benefited a user group, and that was reasonable. $12.4 million, I don't think, is a reasonable argument. The cost-benefit ratio has shifted and a larger proportion of the community wants utility from this spend. Moving from finance to resident preferences. Community research was specifically undertaken in 2024, and the question we asked, Director Angela read out, we that data states very clearly 40% did not think benefits outweighed costs, 31% were unsure. Elected representatives cannot ask what residents want and then proceed to roundly ignore over 70% of our community. Let me also highlight that this research is statistically representative of our whole community, unlike who might be at the public forum and even the number of emails we have been sent in the hundreds. We have reliable and uncontroversial community sentiment on this very specific issue, which we as a council, before I started, asked about this very specific issue. How can we justify ignoring this? Climate and natural environment are time and time again coming up as priorities identified by residents of Ku-ring-gai through community research and voting patterns. Lastly, I want to speak to our role. We have a responsibility as councillors for stewardship and working on clever solutions that do not divide our community. These solutions are never, ever going to be simple. We have to say to our sporting families and community, we see you and we hear you. The problem you have raised is that of durable fields. The solution may not be synthetic fields, however, we as a council are committed to a solution that addresses the problem you are raising, and hence the second part of my amendment. We also ask you to consider the long-term impacts on the broader community. Does that mean I'm done?
No, you've still got 25 seconds.
Thank you.
Continue.
We have to say to the wider community that is worried about long-term environmental and health outcomes that we see and hear you. We also want you to consider that multi-purpose fields are frustrating for sporting communities, and the health and injury impacts of dog holes and gifts, for instance, are a pain. Please work with the sporting community. Ku-ring-gai has never enjoyed, I'm nearly done, Madam Mayor.
That's fine, continue.
Ku-ring-gai has never enjoyed the quality of natural turf and drainage that is being proposed today for Norman Griffiths. Let's recognise it as an innovation, even though the process to get here has been fraught. This amendment is a commitment to investment in new materials and drainage that will support sport and will manage health and environmental risks. It is a compromise, as all good solutions should be. It says to residents that we see and hear them all and are determined to work on a nuanced, real solution for the short and long term. It also says we are drawing a line in the sand with the budget because we can't deal with any more unknown or unmodelled costs and risks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Balachandran. I'll reserve my right and then go to Councillor Martin Smith. Councillor Smith, do you have a question or would you like to speak to this?
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to thank my fellow councillor for a very, very eloquent speech, but unfortunately there's not a great deal of reality in it. I think it's important to note that this isn't, Councillor Balachandran brought in that, we're quickly slipping this in before the rules changed. This was to start in 4th of November 2021. So there was no slip in of a synthetic oval for that. So I think that sort of really undercuts what has been said here this evening. So this has been going on for 4 years. In a perfect world, we would have natural turf. I would prefer my children to play on natural turf. The reality is, with the weather that we've got, the lack of sporting fields that we've got, and we've got children that want to play a sport on a synthetic oval that is a, let's use the word, all-weather terrain synthetic oval field, it allows these games to commence and be played. It can't be played on a natural turf. We know what the hours are. Every one of the councillors here this evening know what hours can be played on a natural turf, and it doesn't stack up anywhere near what it does on a synthetic. Unless this council makes a decision to say to all these kids that want to play soccer, we're going to play ping pong, we'll put some ping pong tables out for everybody, that might actually work. But the reality is, if we've got kids but they're going to be running around playing sports on an oval, in the conditions that we've all seen Norman Griffith on, I think it's ironic that this council does not make a move. It made a decision in 2021. It's up to the other councillors to support that because it was given, the decision was on decent and reasonable grounds. And to be quite honest, everybody in this room that is sitting in here is getting a little bit sick of council with yap, yap, yap. They want a bit more tap, tap, tap. We've had enough. We've got to start moving on to it. We've got to, how many years is it going to take before we actually deliver something? This is the reason why councils are fighting for their position in government, is because another council will come on board and literally try and pull it apart, whether or not it be for political reasons or whether or not it be for emotional reasons, I'm unsure. But the reality is all the facts have been put in front of this council as well. There's been more material to support what is actually happening and what is required, considering that the New South Wales Labor state government has got X amount more development coming in, but let's just ignore that. We can't even cope with what we've got. So I'm definitely speaking against this, and I hope that I get the support from all the other councillors here this evening to reject this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Matt Devlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate the work that Councillor Balachandran has gone to with this amendment. I would have appreciated maybe some counsel, particularly with relation to the second point of that amendment ahead of tonight. We might have been able to come to some sort of outcome. One of the common refrains I've heard in recent weeks or read in recent weeks has been to do your own research, and I have. I've sought balance rather than relying on material biased one way or another, and it has been revealing. Take, for example, some exaggerated claims about what's happening in the Netherlands and the comparisons being made between Ku-ring-gai and Eredivisie, one of the top football leagues in the world based in the Netherlands. A competition where a team hosts 17 league matches per season, and by comparison, just 3 days between the 16th and 18th of May this year, Charles B. Noble hosted 17 matches. I should also note that those league grounds used in the Eredivisie comp do not facilitate weekly training. That is done at another off-site location, which also hosts women's and youth teams. Our locals, our local community, our local clubs merely want to train week in, week out on one site. So I'm not entirely sure why we are making comparison between those fields and the level of fields that we have here in the LGA, because ours sustain far more usage. A professional grade natural football pitch here would be fantastic, and I echo Councillor Smith's sentiment in that regard. I'd love nothing more than for everyone in the community to be able to go out and play on the likes of the SFS or the SCG in our community sport. The reality is that Ku-ring-gai Council does not have hundreds of millions of dollars to back its maintenance programs on very limited number of fields on an annual basis. And if we were to develop or implement professional grade natural football pitches here, it would inevitably lead to locking the community out in order to maintain costs. And if we were to look at upgrading all of our pitches, and I would love to achieve it, I would be concerned that it is probably not necessarily practical, or initially it may be cost prohibitive without associated guarantee to bring up all of our fields to best practice. Colleagues, this isn't about winners and losers between sport and the environment. It's about balance and evidence, and I can see it on both sides. The other thing to note, though, is it's about delivering on Council's promise. The community has waited long enough. Tonight is about making the tough but responsible decision, and in that regard, I cannot support the amendment as it stands. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Now, Councillor Indu Balachandran, do you have questions? Oh, okay. Councillor Barbara Ward.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just have a quick question. Do we have costings at this stage now, where we're at, if we were not to go with the synthetic, or if we were to go with the grass, or vice versa? What's the costing look like? Is it muchness to proceed, or this?
General Manager, I'll refer that to you, or the Corporate Director. Won't be long, Councillor Wood, just waiting for a response.
So, Councillor Wood, could you clarify the question, please?
So my question was that if at this point in time we were saying it's $12 million, if we were to go with the grass, would the cost be the
Oh,
same
I understand.
or close enough?
Yes, it's approximately the same cost. So it's an additional $5.4 million around about for either option, in addition to what we've spent today.
Thank you.
Councillor Sam Nye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I will speak, I don't want to do this, but I'll speak against this amendment. There's 5 points that I want to make. So, first of all, I actually do like point 2. It reads well, it sounds good. Most members of the public reading it will go, hey, that's a fantastic idea. Now, the problem I have with point 2, though, is a lot of this is actually already being done by council. So if I think about my own ward, whether it be Primula Oval this year, Roseville Park Oval last year, Tryon Road Oval in the last 2 years, Wellington Road Oval in the last 2 years as well, we've been systematically going through each oval, improving the drainage, improving the soils, trying to do the best we can to maintain, give it another good 10, 15, 20 years of life. And we have been systematically going through that across the entire LGA as far as I understand. So while I believe point 2 sounds good, it's something that we're already doing and it's nothing new. And this isn't the first time that we've had this, right? Like I think back to the council meeting in May where it had been 12 months since council had resolved to investigate other TOD scenarios. And then in the meeting in May, Councillor Balachandran goes, oh yeah, for the last 8 months, we've been working hard to do this kind of look into alternate scenarios. And that just frustrated me. I just thought, no, it wasn't just during your term of council. We actually started this previously. We're already doing it. Don't frame things as though we were doing nothing in the previous term. So look, I like point 2, but we're already doing it. Now, my second point is Micromex survey, right? So if you've got 29% on one side, 40% on the other side, and an undecided 31% in the middle, I think it's a bit misleading to just treat the 31% as one thing without looking at the underlying factors behind why they voted in that way. Now, if Micromex were to continuously dig down and explore why they voted this way or that way, you may find, for example, that a lot of the opinions are informed by out-of-date understandings of synthetic surfaces and what technologies are available and the environmental impacts that they have and the recyclability and all those sorts of things. Without having asked those questions, it's very difficult to say, oh yeah, therefore 40% of the community, or in fact 71% of the community have a certain position. And I would be very interested to see in a month or two's time when the SRV comes back and we have a survey which shows, for example, that a lot of residents support option 1, how other councillors will go, oh, well, you know what, like this particular survey, they're not well informed. We're going to look at the informed, curated surveys instead. Like, we need to be careful with how we handle survey data and be consistent with it. Now, the third point is that yes, I've read a lot of emails, and especially in the last day, about how members of the community would prefer to see Norman Griffiths used for all sorts of purposes, and that's well and good. I understand that there's demand for different usages, but I go back to the point again that Bicentennial Park has 16 hectares of space. There's lots of different uses for all sorts of groups, and if you want to walk your dog, that's great. We have lots of open space in Bicentennial for you to do that. For example, if you want to have a picnic, that's great. We have lots of space for you to do that at Bicentennial Park, but don't demand what you want to do to happen everywhere within the site. Allow diversification, allow, benefits of different sites serving different purposes at different points in time. We've talked about the risks of the unknown, but may I add that, yes, there are risks with unknown with going down synthetic, but there are some risks with going down the unknown for natural as well in terms of cost. We've got an estimate of 5.4 million for each of the paths. I wouldn't be surprised if, especially if we were to delay things a bit further, costs blow out by a bit more. It's entirely possible. So don't just look at an argument for one side without applying it to the other side. And finally, stewardship and please don't divide. Well, the thing is, as councillors, I don't want to divide people, but the brutal reality of this is no matter what we do and when we choose to make the decision, there will be division out there in the community. So we just need to make a decision. We need to progress. We need to seek diversification and produce the best results with the limited money we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nye. Councillor Indu Balachandran, do you have any questions?
I do, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Regarding the matter of the new guidelines that are coming up that I read in the paper, the turf guidelines, can I clarify something? I read in the papers, and I can't find exactly where it was, that we will be assessing our proposal against these new guidelines, and for whatever reason, if we're not able to adhere to these guidelines, we will note this as a statement. Is that correct? And that we won't necessarily adhere to these guidelines. We'll just note where we're not able to adhere to these guidelines.
Through you, Madam Mayor, advice from a planner has suggested because we are so far progressed in this project, we will need to look at the REF, the Review of Environmental Factors, and where we need to make notations where we can't comply or are close to compliant, that needs to be made through in the REF.
Thank you. Another question, just following on from something Councillor Nye said, and in some ways I think just to remind people that we all have a responsibility to interrogate information as councillors and not to accept what was done before us. If I can go back to one of the directors who read the Micromex research, can I clarify that we did ask what people in those categories thought we asked people who voted in that survey why they were voting in that way, and we do have a sense of what the unsure bracket was unsure about. Is that correct?
Yes, we did. We did ask for reasons.
And what were the, if you don't mind just sharing with us, what were the grey areas that people felt?
So the top reasons for
Being unsure?
being unsure, not enough information, it depends. Positive and negatives, not I'm just reading through other comments, so they're not that specific. Don't know, no response, do not use. So I can't answer because I do not use sports fields.
Later in the report, in the appendix, there's actually detailed information, and the main concerns were preserving natural environment, health concerns, environmental pollution, unpleasant playing surface. This is the red. Sorry, the not enough information.
Not enough, yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Sorry, yes, you're right.
So,
need more information, don't
yeah.
understand, depends on context.
Depends
correct.
on whether that surface will be located. I don't understand the impacts, need more information to
Thank
form
you,
an
yes.
opinion.
So, I
Yep.
beg your pardon, I was just wanting to clarify that. Thank you. That's all I have to say, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Nye, have some questions?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. A question through you to relevant director, if you so choose. Going back to that Micromex research, do we ask, or does Micromex specifically ask, do they specifically ask residents about their knowledge of different synthetic options that are available? For example, rubber crumb versus natural cork. For example, one type of synthetic blade versus another type of synthetic blade, that sort of thing.
Through you, Madam Mayor. No, I don't think so.
Right, thank you.
Councillor Matt Devlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got a couple of questions with relation to the net present value analysis that was included in the consultancy report, and I might ask those through to the associated appropriate director, if I may. Would, in that instance, I'm going to target the general manager for the question in the first instance. Are you able to outline the difference, and I'm only asking this because it was raised on Monday night at the public forum, and we've since received documentation from the community to that effect. Are you able to outline the difference between the report's NPV and the community modelling, i.e. what nominal discount rates may have been included, what the relevance of that is from IPART's recommendations, and by contrast with exactly the same discount rates and other adjustments to costs and revenues included in the community modelling?
General Manager?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe Councillor Devlin is referring to an alternate model that was sent to councillors earlier in the week. Yeah, so some of the differences were, in terms of the modelling, it didn't use perhaps a traditional NPV where costs and revenues are escalated and then discounted at discount rate. It used it was the Treasury guidelines, which actually don't apply to local government. Where
Can I get you to clarify that again, that last part?
It was used. A technique was used, as was referred to by the speaker at the time, Treasury guidelines for cost benefit analysis that don't actually apply to local government. Nevertheless, that's not to say it's not a worthwhile and legitimate document, but it used a different technique to the one that we used, whereby it didn't escalate costs into the future and just discounted them. So that's one explanation for the difference, but that's probably a technicality. I think the biggest differences were due to assumptions about the rates, dollar rates charged for oval hire and the number of hours used for both synthetic and natural turf. And in the community model, it was assumed that the same dollar rates were charged and the same number of hours were used for both fields.
So in that regard, General Manager, is it any accuracy in the community modelling to have created parity between the synthetic hourly hire rate and the natural hourly hire rate, which would then have a drastically altered outcome?
Yes, it made a very big difference.
Okay. Did the community modelling include any of the repayment, potential repayment of the $900,000 to $1 million worth of grant funding and other contributions if council was to go down the avenue of natural turf?
No, it didn't, Councillor.
Didn't make any mention of that. And was any natural turf replacement, the surface itself, ever factored in or accounted in that community modelling by comparison to the report's NPV?
No, it didn't, Councillor. Councillor, nor was it factored into the council model. So while that's a bit of a contested space about whether or not natural turf fields ever need to be rebuilt, the council model gave the benefit of the doubt, if you like, that the natural turf fields don't ever need to be rebuilt.
Right, and that said though, whilst we note that it's a contested item or a contested point, and I know that we've had discussions internally about what those costs may be, and there are some cost projections elsewhere, but would that then be opposed? We're trying to weigh that up and compare it to an NPV that does include surface replacements factored in during the 30-year life cycle. And therefore, is the community modelling again showing disparity between what it is that the council's report modelling includes?
Not in the case of natural turf, because both the community model and our model...
I just correct the question, clarify the question. I'm not talking about the natural turf in that latter part, but with relation to the NPV analysis is factoring in the replacement of the synthetic surface, but at no point is there any replacement cost factored in for the natural surface.
That's correct, Councillor.
Okay. Thank you, General Manager. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Are there any other speakers or questions? Okay, I will now speak and have my go. Residents and fellow councillors, we are now facing a defining choice for the future of Norman Griffiths Oval. Do we continue down the synthetic turf path, or do we take the natural turf road? The real issue in Ku-ring-gai is not a shortage of fields, but a shortage of quality fields. Parents and players are frustrated when games are cancelled because ovals are waterlogged. We need urgent investment in slip drainage, modern turf culverts and better maintenance. Lane Cove Council has shown what can be achieved at Bob Campbell Oval. They rejected synthetic after community outcry and instead delivered improved natural turf. That is the direction we should take. Synthetic fields are not the answer. They exclude dock walkers and families, are unsafe in summer heat and cannot be called all weather when they are too hot to use. With increasing density, what our community needs are high quality, multi-purpose natural fields, fields open and shared by everybody. At Norman Griffiths Oval, 2 flood studies found synthetic turf was fundamentally incompatible with the site, too costly to flood-proof, with significant environmental risks. Yet the project returned to Norman Griffith. Councillors were told impacts were reasonable, but what were they not told was that National Parks had submitted a detailed letter warning of chemical leachage, microplastic and impacts on Lane Cove National Park. That letter was withheld. If I had seen it, and I know other councillors, maybe there would have been a different decision. And today's cost estimate is nearly 4 times the original $3.3 million budget. I know I would not have voted the way I did. Even at half at those total cost estimates, I would have rejected it. Once I became aware of these concerns, I acted. In March 2023, I called for an extraordinary meeting with an amendment to pause the project, allowing proper consultation and ensure the REF was fully scrutinised. That amendment was voted down and Council pressed ahead. Since then, the problems have only grown clearer. The REF was incomplete and only amended on the morning of the court case. An independent flood study by Dr. Martins predicted the adopted design would fail, but was ignored. The contamination report was outdated and funded by the football club. The environmental impact study that was claimed to exist simply does not. And the National Park submission, which Council had resolved must be obtained, was withheld until I requested its release. What began as a $3.3 million project has now blown out to almost 4-fold in today's cost estimate. This is why community trust has been eroded. The community deserves to understand how we got here and why. And Council is now undertaking an external investigation which will highlight just that. And we will come back to us, and that will come back to us in the near future. The lesson is clear. Consultation was denied, transparency was lacking, and scrutiny of the REF, the very safeguard that could have prevented this mess, was denied. We cannot afford to repeat these mistakes. Projects of this scale demand robust, independent reporting that weighs not just cost, but environmental impact, community access, and long-term sustainability. The reports before us, in my opinion, do not meet the standard, and the community has not had the time to properly scrutinise them. And let us not forget the advice of the Chief Scientist's report. Synthetic fields should not be placed in flood-prone areas. Norman Griffiths Oval is exactly such a site. In conclusion, we owe it to our community to ensure a brilliant new generation field is built at Norman Griffiths Oval. The West Pymble Soccer Club deserves a top quality field, but continuing down the synthetic road is in an unsuitable location is irresponsible. The risk of pollution, cost of mitigation measures, issues with downstream erosion is high. We actually can keep everyone happy. Ask the Mossman Football Club, who wanted synthetic and now love Middlehead Oval, which doesn't even have a slip drainage. The price is too high. I believe we owe it to my community, our community, to be fiscally, environmentally and socially responsible. I urge my fellow councillors to do that the same. For that reason, I will be voting against synthetic turf and for natural turf at Norman Griffiths Oval, and I am speaking in support of this amendment. Thank you. Councillor Matt Devlin.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the risk of putting my head into the lion's mouth, I do have a question for you. If the report, as you say, is not up to scratch and is not acceptable, why did you allow it to be tabled?
I don't have control of what is tabled. That comes from the staff, as I do not have any input as to what goes on the agenda. Thank you. Are there any other speakers? Councillor Alec Taylor, I know you're online, so just want to check that
Thank
you
you,
do want to
Madam Mayor.
speak.
No, thank you. Not at this point.
Okay, thank you. As we have no other speakers, I will put that amendment to the vote. All those in favour? Councillor Indu Balachandran, Councillor Kay. Those against? Oh, sorry, Councillor Alec Taylor, my apologies. So that is Councillor Indu Balachandran, Councillor Alec Taylor and Councillor Kay. Those against? Councillor Barbara Ward, Councillor Matt Devlin, Councillor Sam Nye, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Smith. The vote being 5-3, sorry. That is lost. Now we will go back to the original motion. Are there any speakers that would like to speak on that motion? Otherwise, I will offer Matt Devlin, the mover of the motion, if he... Oh, Alex, sorry, you do have your yellow hand, but it's cut off on my screen.
No problem. Thank you,
That's
Madam
all right.
Mayor.
Thank you. Oh, that's better. Thank you. Go ahead, Alec Taylor.
I'd just actually like to speak in favour of this motion, actually, ironically, given I just voted for the amendment. I want to agree with Councillor Smith that with our growing population, we do need more recreational facilities, including greater capacity of our sporting fields. I liked the second recommendation in the amendment. I think that regardless of the surface that we choose at Norman Griffiths, we should develop a systematic upgrade program for the fields with the greatest potential to improve overall field capacity in Ku-ring-gai. I think the decision around surface type at Norman Griffiths is difficult for me. On the one hand, I'm quite sure that synthetic turf is far more productive and valuable to the community than natural turf. On the other hand, I think a synthetic turf pitch would generate between 20 and 40 tonnes of plastic, and we know that plastic breaks down and insidiously disrupts ecosystems and food chains. So my preference is to follow my conscience. This feels like a conscience vote to me, and support the return to natural turf. But given that amendment was not supported tonight, I do think we should get on with this project and complete it, despite it actually bringing more plastic into the world. So I actually will be voting in favour of this recommendation and this motion tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. Councillor Matt Devlin, are you wrapping up?
I am indeed.
As the mover? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now, where to start with Norman Griffiths Oval? I know this is something that frustrates many, and from someone who saw this as an issue to a point that I stood at the last election, I think it's fair to say that the community's trust in council's capacity to deliver infrastructure projects is dead and buried. I, much like everyone in the community, no matter what your perspective is with relation to the proposed surface, I am deeply frustrated by the project's history of failures. I'm not interested in apportioning blame or being stuck in the muck about past issues that bear little or no resemblance as a result of foreshadowed improvements, updated studies and redesign. I don't want the debate to be oversimplified, and I fear that it has, by being referred to as, or boiled down to, pro-sport versus anti-environment or pro-environment versus anti-sport. The processes that have led us here, and as you noted in your own remarks, Madam Mayor, must be investigated, and when they are reviewed, I do hope that those responsible are held to account. But tonight is not that debate. We're at a pivotal juncture where works have essentially halted for the better part of the last 2 years, punctuated only by brief and sporadic activity on site. I want us to turn to the future, to draw a line in the sand and to ask where to from here. We need to restore community trust in council. Delivering this project won't achieve that alone, but it may mark the beginning of a long journey to rebuild faith in council's capacity to deliver infrastructure. This must be done with transparency and accountability. The community must understand and witness due process, and that is where we stand right now, with a report that exposes the full scale and horrors of the problem, and that has been tabled with full public transparency. Tonight we are considering the report provided to Council on completing Norman Griffiths Oval as a synthetic surface. I appreciate the support outlined from some other speakers here tonight. The time frame and cost for completing the project are estimated to be similar for both, with a marginal favour for synthetic. There's been much conjecture offered around the report on items such as the biobasin, sewer rectification, end-of-life replacement, international trends I spoke to through my earlier remarks, as well as best practice, and even the numbers utilised in the net present value analysis, which were addressed by the General Manager. The biobasin is not included in order to pad out a column or skew the numbers. It is, as noted in the council report, the council intends to build the biobasin regardless of the surface because it delivers wider environmental benefits to the catchment by improving the creek's water quality, capturing gross pollutants and ensuring compliance with the updated stormwater strategy. In short, the treatment is the same either way. Regarding the sewer rectification, the damaged Sydney Water asset must be fixed regardless of the surface. The estimate is carried for both options because the methodology and approval sit outside the turf type decision, and until Sydney Water determines the outcome, the report conservatively assumes that there is no saving for either option, and I believe that to be a deliberate and sensible approach. I appreciate the General Manager's remarks in response to my questions with relation to the general NPV, but I would like to note that the 10-year and 20-year surface replacements were included, but not a year 30 replacement, given that it was a 30-year NPV window, as you would need to add the capital and would then also need to extend the analysis to 40 years to capture the extra decade and use of revenue. That is something, and I would believe is why Dr. Mick Badham describes it as a 30-year financial commitment in his own report, which is attached to the council papers. I would, in that regard, would like to remind again my colleagues here tonight that it's not about winners and losers, and I appreciate that there has been much frustration in the community, heated argument and bordering on hatred in some of the correspondence and online interactions between many residents, and that is a shocking blight on the fact that this process has been politicised and used as a game right from its outset. Accordingly, I support the staff recommendations and encourage others to do so. Let's get this finished. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Devlin. Councillor Munn-Smith, you're not in a position where you can speak because that Councillor Devlin just summed up.
I was the seconder.
No, the seconder doesn't get an option where he was doing the sum up and the wrap up, so I'm sorry about that, Councillor Smith.
I'm actually quite happy to answer. I actually asked some questions.
You can't because we've finished the process, yeah. Okay. Unfortunately, Matt, the mover of the original motion, does the sum up.
Thank you.
Okay, no worries, thank you. All right, I will put that to the vote. Okay, all those in favour of the motion? Councillor Ward, Councillor Devlin, Councillor Nye, Councillor Wheatley, Councillor Smith, Councillor Taylor, I didn't miss you this time. Those against? Councillor Balachandran, Councillor Kay. The votes being 6-2, that motion is carried. That's okay. We're nearly towards the end. I'm allowing it, Caroline, thank you. Business without notice. Is there any business without notice subject to clause 9.3 of the Code of Meeting Practice? There being none. Conclusion of the meeting. There being no further business, I'd like to thank councillors and staff. I'd also like to thank members of the public for their attendance today. The webcast of this meeting will be available on the council website and minutes will be published within the next 2 working days. I declare the meeting closed at 8:05. Thank you.